All right, looks like Ayana is having a little difficulty getting in. Okay, looks like you can't go to evolution because I haven't published it yet. I forget when I do for one class, I don't always do for the second. All right, it is published now. She's still having trouble getting in. Okay, so let's look at that. All right, so it should be published now. So as always, look at let me share. Let me start from there. We're waiting for her to get in. You might have to refresh your page because I just published it. Okay. Okay. She's still not in. Still saying joining. I wish I could send her a message. Ah, there we go. She's in. Or not. Oh, she gave up. Okay. All right. So we want to be, everybody should be able to um, look at this now. Let me look at student view. So, as I started to say earlier, as far as the end of course test is concerned, one, this is a small module, and two, that doesn't have a lot of weight as far as the end of course test is concerned. So we're going to go through this one kind of quickly. There are some points that we do need to make, and again, we're going to kind of skim through it as quickly as possible, but still cover all the necessary points. All right, so it's showing up student view. Okay, so again, first page. Make sure you go through the vocabulary as always. And then on the next page, all right, have y'all been to see Jurassic Park yet? Or is it out yet? Or is it, I think the new one is coming out later this year. But are you Jurassic Park fans? All right, on this page, the thing that is most important, and I'm going to show you a video on this in a minute. The thing that's important are these three words going on the side here. Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. And then knowing, not so much knowing that after the eras, so know the terms era, period, and then know what life forms are representative during those times. Um, so we're going to just kind of, like I said, briefly go through each of those. And then they break down the eras over here some more as well. But as far as this is concerned, you do need to know that this chart, the bottom is the oldest. And then, so the arrow goes down for the millions of years ago. And then kind of just be familiar with key organisms from each era. Okay, and naturally, man falls in the last era. All right, so like I said, we're going to watch a video in a second to go through that. So then it goes through eras, and we're going to watch this brief thing over here. Come back and watch those, but we're going to watch the other one first. So I want you to go through that, and then we're going to watch two videos. The second video deals with each segment of biology has a father of something. So we have the father of evolution is going to be Charles Darwin. So we're going to watch one about Charles Darwin and look at his theories on evolution. And again, I want to put out that these are theories. Okay, everybody has their different beliefs on the beginning of life, and I'm not here to change your mind, but I'm just putting out what the theories are. Okay. All right. So teaching evolution is always a touchy subject. All right. So, oh, oops, got one more. I think Ayana gave up. Okay. All right. Isabella is in. All right. I'm going to unshare for a minute. So while I'm pulling up the other two videos, do read those 2 pages. Get a head start reading those 2 pages. And I will pull these up in a little while. Let me see if she got lost, gave up. Ha- A lot of folks are having technical difficulties. Oh, okay. Xyla, Xyla. Okay. All right. So it looks like right now we're just missing 2 people. Hopefully Xyla will come in a little while. All right. So again, look at the first 2 pages in evolution while I pull up these videos. Where'd the other one go? There she is. Okay. All right. Got everybody except Landon. All right. So the first one we're going to watch is deals with the geologic times scale, and then we're going to watch a second one that deals with Charles Darwin. So give the videos your attention
The
for a minute.
Jurassic period, the Cretaceous period, the Cambrian. At this point, you are probably aware that the entire history of our planet has been subdivided into numerous time periods, like bees. Scientists have spent the last few centuries putting together this geologic timescale, a system of chronological dating that relates the rocks on our planet to time. If you found a dinosaur fossil, odds are you wouldn't know how long ago it lived on Earth. At least, not exactly. But with knowledge of the geologic timescale, you could be reasonably sure that it lived during the Jurassic period. Development of the geologic timescale has required extensive work in both relative and absolute dating of rocks.
I gotta get these
Taxes
commercials out of
is
here.
paying the price.
It has required stratigraphic correlation of lithologies, facies, and fossils located all across our planet. And it has required international cooperation among scientists of all backgrounds, working to develop a standardized system for recognizing, defining, and naming time intervals of the past. The formal geologic timescale used by scientists is known as the International Chronostratigraphic Chart. It includes not just the names of the time intervals, but also their absolute ages, measured in millions of years, and determined from absolute dating methods. The chart is produced by a collaborative academic organization known as the International Commission on Stratigraphy. The Commission revises the chart almost every year, and sometimes multiple times a year. The changes aren't merely to improve the aesthetics. The Commission incorporates new information, new data, and new knowledge into the chart. They refine it as we improve our ability to tell time.
Now they want you to notice the changes in the chart as the years go by. And it appears to have stopped in 2020.
As you can see, over the last decade, the colors of the timescale have been revised, and new time intervals have been added through subdivision of old ones. The thicknesses and absolute ages of the intervals have also been refined. And you probably noticed that golden spikes were frequently added to the chart over the last decade. These golden spikes are actually a real thing. Think of them like railroad spikes. When workers set out to construct the first transcontinental railroad in the US, They worked in two directions. One group started in Omaha, and the other started on the Pacific coast. They built toward each other, meeting at Promontory Point in Utah. When they finally met, a ceremonial gold spike was driven into the ground to join the rails. The last spike driven to complete the first transcontinental railroad, a symbolic gesture of the scale of the achievement. Well, geologists do something similar. In geology, golden spikes are driven into strata in order to mark the boundaries between time intervals. More specifically, the spike marks the location of the global stratigraphic section and point for a boundary. The section is the sequence of strata at the golden spike site. The point is the place where the spike is actually located. Although the golden spikes aren't always so golden, they occur around the world and serve two purposes. Like the spike used to join the two sides of the Transcontinental Railroad, the golden spikes in geology also serve as a symbol of the tremendous effort put forth by geologists to understand the structure and relationships of strata on our planet, and more importantly, to develop enough knowledge to recognize different boundaries between time intervals. But more importantly, the golden spikes are used to designate sections and points that are reserved for scientific analysis. GSSPs are protected from development and destruction so that scientists can use them as references.
Let's play.
Make your very own monster.
I really want to build a cute monster. Will you help me? Click here and build your very...
They can use them as references for drawing stratigraphic correlations between the GSSPs and other sites around the world. An important aspect of the International Chronostratigraphic Chart is that it deals with both rock and time. Recall that when strata can be correlated across wide areas, we call them stratigraphic units. A stratigraphic unit is a volume of rock which can be traced laterally across a region. Each stratigraphic unit receives a name. Some units can be traced laterally across a local region or area. Others can be correlated across the globe. There is a hierarchical system for naming, organizing, and assigning stratigraphic units. On a local or regional scale, the smallest stratigraphic unit is a single stratum or layer, which is called a bed. Beds don't usually receive names. They are too numerous. Various beds are grouped together into members. All beds in the member have the same lithology. Members of similar but not identical lithology are grouped together into formations. Formations are the most important units for most geologists. They, in turn, are grouped into larger groups and supergroups. When groups and supergroups can be correlated across the globe, they are organized into larger chronostratigraphic units, or bodies
All right, I skipped a little bit because
correspond
this is the
to
important part.
geochronological units, or time intervals. Whereas the chronostratigraphic units are bodies of rock that exist today, geochronological units are time intervals that transpired in the past. The geochronological units include the following from smallest to largest: ages, epochs, periods, eras, and eons. Eons were the longest time intervals. ages were the shortest. As you can see, chronostratigraphic units have corresponding geochronological units. This makes sense. Again, the purpose of the geologic timescale is to relate the rocks we see on Earth in the present to time intervals that transpired in the past. Those of you who plan to dig deep into geology should commit yourselves to learning the eons, eras, and periods of the geologic timescale.
Okay, so if you were in earth science, we would spend more time with this, but basically you just need to have some awareness that there is a geologic time scale, that it starts from the bottom to the top as far as layers of the earth. And just like I said, have some kind of knowledge as to where certain organisms fit in. All right, so we're going to skip to the second page and look at Darwin now. And again, like I said, we're going to kind of go through this unit a little quickly because it doesn't have a lot of weight on your end of term exam, and it's a very short unit also. Okay, make that big first.
Life began from a simple, single cell 4 billion years ago, evolving into the mind-boggling diversity we see today. But how did this all happen? Evolution, yes, but what exactly is evolution, and how does it work? Evolution is the net change in organisms or a population over the span of many generations. We can break this definition into two parts.
All right. As far as this is concerned, again, know the definition. Okay, he's going to go into what they believe to be the beginning and how it branches out into life as it exists today. Again, it's his theory, so just keep that in mind.
The net change in organisms or a population, and one that occurs over the span of many generations. The first part reveals what and where these changes happen. The mechanisms of evolution, like natural selection. The second part tells us two things: the time it takes for organisms to change, and, less obviously, that the process involves reproduction. DNA, heritability, and change. The core of evolution is the change in organisms, and the first place to investigate this change is the DNA. DNA is the blueprint of all life. Its sequence is composed of 4 letters that bond in specific ways, A to T and C to G. Small sections of the DNA sequence, called genes, code for certain traits, like eye color or blood group. Genes can come in a variety of flavors, meaning that the gene for eye color can code for blue eyes, or brown eyes, or even green eyes. Each of us possess a unique combination of these genes, giving some of us brown eyes with blonde hair, or blue eyes with brown hair.
All right, I pause this. He's going to go through kind of a review of what we just did in biology. And the reason why that's important is because natural selection has a lot to do with genetics. So it is appropriate that we follow genetics with natural selection, but it has to do with a change in the genes. And then if there's a change in the genes, then you have a change in the phenotype and sometimes the behavior of an organism. So the first part of this is kind of a biology review before he actually gets to natural selection.
Now, these different flavors of genes get all mixed and rematched in a process called recombination, which happens when organisms mate.
Stop asking research questions to ChatGPT. Its answers are not reliable, and they are difficult to be.
In the nucleus of a cell, long, twisted, ladder-like strands of DNA are formed into compact chromosomes. Chromosomes come in pairs. Humans, for example, have 23 pairs of chromosomes, one from the mother and one from the father. In the process of creating the egg and the sperm, the chromosomes pair up and then swap parts of their DNA. This is recombination. Once this recombination happens, the paired-up chromosomes are then separated, and the resulting eggs and sperm have only one half of the chromosome pair. Then, when two people mate, a random egg and a random sperm will fuse together to create new life. Recombination creates combinations of genes that are unique to each one of us, thus creating diversity. This is why you and your siblings don't look identical. Recombination isn't the only way that variety develops. Another process is mutation, which is a change in the DNA sequence. Mutations can either modify traits, like a new eye color, or create a completely new trait. The sad news is that most mutations won't make you Jean Grey or Wolverine. In fact, most mutations don't cause any change at all. They are effectively neutral. In a few cases, mutations can be good, like a mutation that allows animals to camouflage and hide from predators, or produce a scent that makes it extremely appealing to the opposite sex. Whereas bad mutations are those that cause diseases or weaken an organism. Mutations can occur randomly, or it can happen when DNA divides and the cell's machines make mistakes. Or it could even happen from external factors, such as radiation, or when viruses infect us. Natural selection and genetic drift. Natural selection is a process where the environment selects traits that allow the individual or group to survive best. Consider a hypothetical organism that gets a mutation one day that gives it heightened hearing. This better hearing allows it to detect and flee from predators faster, so that it lives longer. It passes this better hearing to its offspring, who also survive longer than organisms that don't hear as well. Soon, there are many better hearing individuals in the group. This better hearing was selected for. On the other hand, if an individual can't hear as well, it is less likely to survive long enough to reproduce and pass those genes on to its offspring. Natural selection will select a trait that increases an organism's fitness. Here, fitness doesn't mean strength. It means anything that will aid the animal in survival and reproduction. This is how the modern dog evolved from wolves. However, instead of the environment doing the selecting, it was humans. Humans selected those traits in wolves that made them better companions, including loyalty and a more docile temperament. The wolves that showed these traits were bred. Over time, humans selected and mixed these traits, resulting in the wide variety of dog breeds we see today. This is called artificial selection. Sometimes, though, luck also plays a role in how animals evolve. For example, a natural catastrophe can destroy the majority of a given population. The individuals that remain are there by mere chance, so the traits that remain in the gene pool aren't necessarily any better suited for their environment. Or perhaps an organism or population somehow finds itself in a completely new place, separated from its normal reproductive population. The individuals in this new place will now evolve and spread in that area. This is called genetic drift. Though
Commercial.
Introducing our all-new, all-electric SUV, the Honda Prologue, offering
Though natural selection chooses traits that enable survival, it isn't perfect. Diseases and certain disorders aren't necessarily eliminated, even though they cause pain. Furthermore, traits that no longer serve a purpose will not be actively selected against unless they become detrimental for survival. They will similarly be passed down to future generations if the animal manages to live long enough to mate. Speciation. Thus far, we've only spoken about evolution within a single group, but life is a tree, with thousands of branches to different species. And how do these species evolve? This occurs through a long process of speciation. Over time, mutations, recombination events, natural selection, luck, and other factors create a gulf of differences within a population that was once homogeneous. These changes might happen because of a literal geographic barrier that separates a population. The environments on either side of the barrier might be different, and over many generations, the two populations become different species. This happened with Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands. At one point, the finches' ancestors from the mainland must have migrated to the islands. The islands were rich in food resources, and each had a slightly different food profile. Due to this variation, the birds with longer beaks could survive on insects, whereas those with blunter beaks fed on seeds and leaves. Over many generations, evolution took over and distinctly different finch species evolved. Once a new species comes into being, it doesn't necessarily mean that the old species vanishes. Just as single-celled bacteria didn't go extinct just because multicellular life evolved, similarly, old life does not simply go extinct because a new species appears on the scene. Each can tap a different resource and exist in their new habitats. The evolution of life doesn't only act through one mechanism. The main debate revolves around how much one mechanism contributed to the changes we see today. Do deer have antlers because they want to look sexy, or is it simply a byproduct of some other change? Did insects get smaller because of a lack of oxygen, or predators, or both? Scientists study evolution in the lab and through the fossil record. We know how whales evolved through the existence of intermediate fossils. In the lab, we breed bacteria, flies, and worms to see how they evolve under different conditions. This evidence gives us some hint at how life reached such an astonishing level of diversity. With all that in mind, take a moment to notice the diversity on our incredible planet and appreciate that it took 4 billion years of evolution to lead not only to you, but to the birds outside your window, the fly buzzing around your face, the dog curled up at your feet, and every other magnificent variety of life on Earth.
Okay. Now he went through a lot of vocabulary in that video, and we are going to focus more on the evolution part of this as opposed to the geologic timeline part of it. So you will need to know those terms that he discussed as far as natural selection, artificial selection, genetic drift. We are going to go through all of those. The next time I see you, we are going to do an activity, PhET Lab, where you're going to practice using some of those techniques. Let me go back one page first. I think there was a video over there. So I'm back in Canvas now, and I want to, again, hopefully you've read over the first page, looked at the things here, and I'm just going to briefly play these videos for you.
Earth's early history. The fossil record also indicates that major changes occurred in Earth's climate, geography, and life forms. Several lines of evidence indicate that the Earth is at least 4.5 billion years old. The oldest fossils of bacteria and cyanobacteria, which are blue-green algae, have been found in rocks about 3.5 billion years old during the Precambrian. These were the only forms of life that existed until about 1.7 billion years ago. Since that time, a tremendous variety of organisms have inhabited the Earth, most of which are now extinct. How did life begin? Our young planet was probably struck with many objects, creating enough heat to melt the planet. Earth's elements then rearranged themselves according to density, with the densest elements sinking to the core. Less dense elements and compounds formed the early atmosphere. There was no oxygen gas at first. Earth's surface was violent with volcanic eruptions, comets, and asteroids. About 3.8 billion years ago, the Earth's surface cooled enough for thunderstorms to begin and the water vapor condensed to liquid water, forming the Earth's oceans. Early oceans were brown due to huge amounts of iron deposits. Much later, large organic molecules formed protenoid microspheres, which acted like precells. They had selectively permeable membranes and could store and release energy. Small pieces of RNA could have formed and replicated in ways that are not fully understood. These simple RNA pieces led to a DNA system that could direct protein synthesis. These first working cells were prokaryotes. In the 1950s, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey simulated the Earth's early environment and were able to form several amino acids over a period of days. Where did oxygen come from? Microfossils, microscopic fossils of prokaryotes, show that the first forms of life were anaerobic. As photosynthetic prokaryotes evolved, oxygen gas was released, accumulating in the atmosphere. The presence of oxygen was poisonous to some of the early organisms, those that had evolved in and required anaerobic environments, and drove them to extinction. Organisms evolved that could use oxygen for respiration. Where did eukaryotic cells come from? The endosymbiotic theory states that smaller prokaryotic organisms entered a primitive ancestral cell, and the two cells formed a symbiotic relationship. The prokaryote could have helped to form chloroplasts and/or mitochondria. Sexual reproduction evolved next. This means of reproduction provided a mechanism for gene reshuffling and further increased the chances of evolutionary change in a species due to natural selection. Multicellularity evolved later.
Okay. Again, notice a lot of times they say not fully understood, so these are still theories of what they believe to be the beginnings of time, and so is this one. So this one kind of touches on what you saw before as far as the tree of life is concerned. But again, dealing with evolution, how they believe things started, to how we get to the top of the
150
tree.
years after the publication of Darwin's revolutionary book, modern genetics has confirmed its fundamental truth. All life is related. And it enables us to construct with confidence the complex tree that represents the history of life. It began in the sea, some 3,000 million years ago. Complex chemical molecules began to clump together to form microscopic blobs, cells.
These were the seeds from which the tree of life developed. They were able to split, replicating themselves as bacteria do. And as time passed, they diversified into different groups. Some remained attached to one another so that they formed chains. We know them today as algae. Others formed hollow balls which collapsed upon themselves, creating a body with an internal cavity. They were the first multi-celled organisms. Sponges are their direct descendants. As more variations appeared, the tree of life grew and became more diverse. Some organisms became more mobile and developed a mouth that opened into a gut. Others had bodies stiffened by an internal rod. They, understandably, developed sense organs around their front end. A related group had bodies that were divided into segments with little projections on either side that helped them to move around on the sea floor. Some of these segmented creatures developed hard protective skins which gave their bodies some rigidity. So now the seas were filled with a great variety of animals. And then around 450 million years ago, some of these armored creatures crawled up out of the water and ventured onto land. And here, the tree of life branched into a multitude of different species that exploited this new environment in all kinds of ways. One group of them developed elongated flaps on their backs, which over many generations eventually developed into wings. The insects had arrived. Life moved into the air and diversified into myriad forms. Meanwhile, back in the seas, those creatures with a stiffening rod in their bodies had strengthened it by encasing it in bone. A skull developed with a hinged jaw that could grab and hold on to prey. They grew bigger and developed fins equipped with muscles that enabled them to swim with speed and power. So fish now dominated the waters of the world. One group of them developed the ability to gulp air, from the water surface. Their fleshy fins became weight-supporting legs, and 375 million years ago, a few of these backbone creatures followed the insects onto the land. They were amphibians with wet skins, and they had to return to water to lay their eggs. But some of their descendants evolved dry, scaly skins and broke their link with water by laying eggs with watertight shells. These creatures, the reptiles, were the ancestors of today's tortoises, snakes, lizards, and crocodiles. And of course, they included the group that, back then, came to dominate the land, the dinosaurs. But 65 million years ago, a great disaster overtook the Earth. Whatever its cause, a great proportion of animals were exterminated. All the dinosaurs disappeared except for one branch, whose scales had become modified into feathers. They were the birds. While they spread through the skies, a small, seemingly insignificant group of survivors began to increase in numbers on the ground beneath. These creatures differed from their competitors in that their bodies were warm and insulated with coats of fur. They were the first mammals. With much of the land left vacant after the Great Catastrophe, they now had their chance. Their warm, insulated bodies enabled them to be active at all times, at night as well as during the day, and in all places, from the Arctic to the tropics, in water as well as on land, on grassy plains and up in the trees.
Today, we and the rest of the mammals share the world with the descendants of those other great animal groups that have evolved on this planet, with birds and with reptiles, with insects and with fish, and even with those simplest of all living organisms that first appeared over 3,000 million years ago, with bacteria.
Okay, so that's another theory on how things evolved. All right, so as far as this page is concerned, make sure you go through the geologic challenge, and then on the next page, okay, so these are two names that you need to become familiar with, Lamarck and Darwin. Sounded more like Mission Impossible. But all right, so the previous video that we saw before talked about what is evolution and the theories of evolution. So again, Charles Darwin is what we call the father of evolution, the way Mendel was the father of genetics. And so I'm going to let you take the time to go through and read about his theories there. Come back and we're going to, the video also mentions survival of the fittest. And again, they mentioned not, having the most muscles, but it meant who are genetically selected for. Okay, so that you've developed genetic traits that allow you to survive the cold, that allow you to run faster, to be more sensitive to danger. Those are things that you are genetically selected for, which makes you better able to survive in your environment and not die. And again, the video pointed out if you die, you can't reproduce. And if you don't reproduce, your species does not continue. So things that become extinct is because they could not survive, whatever environmental changes happen, and they did not reproduce, and their species does not continue. All right, so go ahead and read through that. Take the time to do the matching section here. And while you all are doing that, I'm going to check on everybody's test results and fix the grade book so that it properly reflects the correct scores. I think everybody's taken the test now. The other day when I checked, everybody had not taken the test. And so I didn't want to fiddle with the score until everybody did. But I will do that now. So I'm going to stop sharing, and what I'd like for you to do with the remaining part of the class is to go through, like I said, those 2 pages, do all of the activities on both pages, um, and make sure that you look at before you go, you need to know. So make sure you know those points. Like I said, on Thursday, when I see you, we're going to do a PhET simulation on natural selection. So I'll go over that. I think, let me check just one sec. I think with yours, nope, it's not in there. Okay, so I got to make sure it's loaded. I transferred it to your class, but it doesn't look like it loaded in the module, so I need to check on that. All right, so again, with the time that's left, I want you to make sure you go through those pages and do those activities on those 2. And the next time we meet, we're going to go forward with natural selection. Okay. And it's probably not showing up because I dated it to be available on Thursday. That's what it did. Okay. Also, we are coming up on the end of this quarter, the end of third quarter. So if you have any other missing assignments, you want to make sure that you get those done because they'll be doing report cards in about 3 weeks. We also have an end of quarter exam to do. So make sure you're caught up on looking through on any missing assignments that might be outstanding. All right, Malik, there's a second test. Hopefully you're working on that second test because right now it's showing that you only did one of two. There's exactly 3 people who are actually reading the page that they're supposed to be reading. All right, that's on you. All right, Malik, please don't forget to do that second activity on the genetic practice. Whoops. There you go. Oh. Apparently, I have to go in and take off the late penalty as well. Okay, folks, time is up. See you on Thursday. And again, we're going to do that activity. So make sure you're familiar with your natural selection vocabulary. You'll have a great rest of your day.